in which you can send an InfoPath Forms view through an email. As usual, this webinar requires audio. So I'll start off by a quick slideshow talking about the different concepts, followed by a demo, and then we'll have some time for questions and answers. Okay, so recently a number of customers have come to us asking about ways that they can view copies of their forms while offline or without using InfoPath or a browser. So InfoPath and SharePoint will allow you to open forms and look at them, but if your XMLs are on a server somewhere and you're offline, then you don't have any way of opening them. So there are several different ways to send the contents of, send a rendered version of a form through an email. And then when you've got that, you can open it up from your mailbox anytime you want to. So today I'm going to be talking about 3 ways of doing this. The first is to use an email submit connection in the InfoPath filler. The second is to use the same kind of connection but in a browser form. And the last is a technique that we recently came up with, which is to first render the form as HTML, save it to a SharePoint document library, and then use a custom workflow to send that through email. So email submit connections in the filler. What this does, it submits a rendered version of your current view through Outlook. There are some things that are good about it. It's very easy to use. It doesn't require you to configure anything on a server anywhere. But it also has a downside in that it involves a confirmation dialog which the users have to interact with. It can be jarring at times. And also it requires having Outlook and having an email account set up on there in order to be able to send them messages. So in order to set up an email submit connection in InfoPath, it's a lot like any other kind of data connection. You first select that you want a connection to submit data. You pick the as an email message button, option button. And then you'll get a number of options for either using constant values or values from the form to determine the assignee, the CC address, the BCC address, and the subject. And you can also provide some introduction text for the contents of the email. And then on the last screen of the data connection setup wizard, you would select the first option, send only the active view of the form and no attachments, in order to include the form's view in the email. So this is what it looks like when the user, when the data connection executes. The user gets this dialog. If they click send, the message will be sent with the contents, and if they click cancel, that will cause the remaining rules to stop firing. And this is basically what it looks like when it arrives. Now you can also use this functionality in a browser form. It's very similar, except instead of sending it through Outlook, SharePoint Server takes care of sending the email. Some nice things are it's easy to set up in InfoPath, just like the type that I just showed you. And it doesn't involve a confirmation dialog before sending. It'll just send without any notification. Does not require Outlook or setting up anything in an email client. But some downsides are that it requires configuring the email on the SharePoint server, the outgoing email that is, and the from address cannot be configured. The from address is a single value that's specified when the SharePoint email is set up. And another thing is that this cannot be used in sandbox forms. It requires codeless forms or admin deploy. And I guess the same could be said about both of the other two options that I'm talking about, because a filler form wouldn't be sandbox either. So, as I said, using this type of submit requires some settings on the SharePoint Central Admin. So to set these up, an admin would have to go to the system settings, to then click configure outgoing email settings, and then set up a few fields here. Basically, you need to have an SMTP server that you can use. You would specify the from address that would be used in all the emails that are sent, and you can indicate a reply address in the character set as well. So when a form is sent this way, again, the contents of the current view are rendered and then sent in email, and it comes up like this. Now, the last is a technique that we came up, and it allows a little more customization. First, the form is rendered as an HTML file, and this is saved to a document library in SharePoint. Then a custom workflow picks this up, locates the submitted document, and then sends that as the body of an email. So a few nice things here is it does not require a server email configuration. The from address is configurable. You can either use a field from the form, a lookup field, any constant value you want. It also allows setting up workflow logic to determine when, how, and to whom these emails are sent. And one consequence of this is it means that business process designers can set up their workflows and determine when the email is sent without having to do anything in InfoPath. As long as InfoPath is rendering the forms and sending them to that document library, then the business process designer can configure when to use them. Another thing is that you get a record of your rendered forms in this document library, so you can pull them up later. You can distribute them however you like. This also allows setting the priority of emails, so low, normal, or high, which the other two options don't allow. This has a few downsides as well. It requires deploying a custom workflow action to SharePoint. And the render form QRules command, which is used for rendering the form's HTML, requires the form to be full trust, and consequently this would require an admin deployment if it's a browser form. So there are a few extra steps to setting this up. The first thing you would do is you would create a field like this for the rendered file. You'd give it a QRules link and a QRules file name attribute. Then you would add a render form command to the submit button, which basically renders a form, renders a view, and if you like, you can render all views or more than one view, which is another benefit of this command. And then here this result XPath parameter specifies where the rendered form should be stored in the data source, which is this field right here. Then you would add logic to use the save to SharePoint command to save the rendered form to your document library. So here I'm using a document library called Fly With Us Docs. The location of the rendered forms field is here, and for the name of the document I'm using the field called request title and the current date and time. This will also involve setting up a few libraries. You'll create an ordinary document library for the rendered HTML forms, and then an ordinary form library for the InfoPath Forms. You publish the form as an admin-approved content type, and then associate that with your form library. So then there's a workflow involved as well. You would deploy the workflow action to your SharePoint server before the first use. Create a list workflow for your form library, and then add the email items HTML custom action to the workflow and set up its properties. So, and I'll demo this a little bit later, so it's a little less confusing. But here I'm setting up who the email to field will be, setting a subject to just a constant value, but that can be a lookup as well, and then indicating how to pull the related document from the document library. And then I'm using normal as the priority. And then when this is emailed, it shows up in email like this. Okay. So let's go into the demo. So I'll start off with the email form. So here we have a data connection for the email. So here you can see I've used the assignee field for the to field of the email. I just used a constant value for the subject, but this can involve form fields as well. And then I modified the introduction a little bit to say the following form has been assigned to you. Please handle it at your earliest convenience. As I pointed out earlier, this option is selected. That's it. So as for what the rules would look like, what we have here is just submit using a data connection action, and then we submit the form to SharePoint. So I'll show you what that looks. So here we are using in a browser. Call the request new uniform. Assign it to myself. And submit this. So the form is submitted to the document library, and here's my email. Here's the rendered form. So as I mentioned, again, there's no confirmation dialog in this case, and the from address is what was configured in the email configuration for the server, SharePoint admins. Now, as for how this looks when it's a filler form, I can just preview this in the filler. Assign it to myself again. Submit that. As we see here, this is what the confirmation dialog looks like, so I'll click Send here. Okay, and here's the email, and that's what it looks like. Now, as for the other form, this one, as I said, is a little more complex. Here we have this rendered form field for storing the rendered HTML of the form. So basically what happens is when I click the submit button, first thing it does is renders the form as HTML and stores that in this rendered form field. Then it uses the qrules save to SharePoint command to save that file in a document library. And then this will populate the qrules link and qrules file name fields. And here I'm having the qrules file name field also populate a version without the extension. And these qrules link, qrules file name, assignee, and file name no extension are all set up as promoted properties in the form. So after that's saved, just do ordinary submit to SharePoint again to submit this to the form library, and then close it. Now, for setting up the workflow, what we'll do, Fly With Us request is the form library for these InfoPath forms. So I'll call this Fly With Us email workflow. And in this case, I'll just do a very simple one-step workflow. I'll use email item as HTML. The to address will be a lookup from the form fields, which will be the assignee field, which I just mentioned is a promoted property from the form. Enter a value for the subject. Now for what to use as the current item, since in this case the current item is an XML form, what I need to do is use a lookup to locate the corresponding HTML document in the document library. So what I'll do is I'll get that from File With Us docs. The field would be the name field, which would be the file name in this case. And that's going to correspond to the qrules file name field in the current item. And it gives me warning that this might not necessarily find a match. And I'm only concerned about when it will, so that's fine. And I'll use the normal priority. So I could go ahead and publish this, and this workflow would run anytime a document is submitted to the Fly With Us request document library. But I have already set up such a workflow right here. It looks essentially the same. So what I'll do is I'll go to that document library. Okay. Fill in some fields. And then submit that. Any moment now. Here we go. So as we can see, here this is sent to me. All the fields are filled in the way I filled them in. And there we have that. Additionally, I can go over here to the document library, and all the rendered forms that I've saved out are stored here. So if I wanted to, I could open one up from this document library. I'm not going to. So that pretty much sums it up. I hope that between the samples we'll provide with this webinar and this video and the slides, you'll be able to reproduce any one of these scenarios that you want. Now we're going to go to questions very soon, but before I turn it over to questions, I'd like to remind everyone that we have training coming up. We offer an InfoPath Masterclass from March 4th to March 8th. It consists of 5 half-days and should get you up to speed on anything you could need to know to get started with in-depth InfoPath form development. We also have a beginner's class, which is an online webinar that runs from February 25th to 28th. If you're interested, please email coursemanager@qdabra.com for more information. You can also find more information at this address up here. Also, please check out InfoPathDev.com, which is our online InfoPath forum. A number of MVPs posting there regularly, checking messages regularly, and answering any kind of question you might have. So that's it for my presentation. Let's go over to questions. So the first, I see the resulting email. The first question is from King Elder. The question is, I see the resulting email in Outlook shows a nicely formatted form view, but can the InfoPath form in the email send the contents as text without a workflow? I'm not entirely sure what this question means. If you use an email submit connection from InfoPath, which is a built-in feature, then you can submit emails without using workflow. Workflow is only required for the last approach. If you want to clarify your question, please do. I see. So you want to have the form content in the email and also be able to open the InfoPath form from the email, or have the InfoPath XML included as an attachment. At present, we don't have a way to do both of those things. But I imagine that the custom workflow action that we've made could be possibly modified to be able to do that. We'd have to look into that. Right. The next question is also from King Elder. He says, thanks. A workflow can do this. Just wondering about the capabilities of the form in email. Yeah. So the built-in email submit functionalities in the InfoPath give you an option of either sending the view in an email or sending the InfoPath XML as an attachment, which can be opened up. Unfortunately, it does not currently provide a way to do both at the same time. Thank you for attending, Qdabra.
I just want to say, if you're interested in getting the sample forms and the presentation, please do fill out the feedback survey that will appear once the webinar is over, and then we'll get those sent out to you.
All right, looks like we don't have many questions today, so we'll wait another 3 minutes to see if any roll in, and we'll call it a day.